That was pretty much the most bog standard Doctor Who episode we've had this season. And that's not a bad thing.
Oh, this is so Bridgerton.
Lord Barton approaches.
Oh, let's talk less of heartbreak.
There's a Cholder at work on this planet, and I've been paid good money to find you.
What could be better than a wedding?
Hello, welcome to Culture Filter. I am the Fill-In Filter, and this is my review of Doctor Who Rogue, aka the Bridgerton episode. Now, interestingly, I've recently started watching Bridgerton. I'm up to about episode 6 on season 1. It completely passed me by the first time it was out, but there was a new season coming up that my wife wanted to watch, and she was going to rewatch the whole series, so I was like, well, I'm going to watch it with you, because I want to see what all the fuss is about. And I must say, I am quite enjoying it, in fact. It's interesting. So I'm primed for this episode now. And I did notice lots of things that were it's overtly commenting on Bridgerton, because not only does Ruby say, oh, this is so Bridgerton, they actually mention the TV show multiple times in this episode. But there are scenes in this episode that they are clearly basing on scenes in Bridgerton, including the opening scene where you've got two, Regency era gentlemen having a argument, and one telling the other that he must marry his sister because he has shamed her or whatever, and for her honor and all that, and the subject of a duel comes up, and spoilers, but that is a plot point in season 1 of Bridgerton. That happens in Bridgerton almost, and obviously it goes in a different direction here, but there are various things in this that are absolutely references to Bridgerton, and as a brand new Bridgerton watcher, I'm here for it. As I said, this does feel like a very much traditional Doctor Who kind of standard adventure episode. We get the pre-opening sequence, which sets up the villain that doesn't have the Doctor in it, and somebody gets murdered. There's the creepy goings on. It's something alien. We know that happens, and then we get after the credits, we get the Doctor coming in and companion coming into the situation and discovering what's going on. Very traditional, and as I alluded to in the opening, we kind of needed that, because every episode this season has been I've loved a lot of them. I've liked, to some degree, all of them. But it does very much feel like there's not a sort of standard episode amongst them up until this point. There's been lots of really high stakes, high concept stuff going on, which is great, and I love that. But in a shorter season, like 8 episodes like we've got here, it does feel like, oh my god, I'm getting hit in the face every week with something that is great, and I love it, but it doesn't feel like we're just getting to know the characters in the same way as we used to do when we had 13 episodes, and the episodes that sort of some people might call filler episodes, but I would call more sort of the groundwork episodes. We're not getting that. So this is nice to have that for a change. The closest we got to this, I guess, was Space Babies before, but that was also Ruby's first adventure in the TARDIS, so it had that element to it. So it still wasn't a bog standard adventure in that sense, although the rest of the episode kind of was. But this is the first, fully, TARDIS team arrive somewhere, deal with a situation, move on. There's no wider, massive implications to the ongoing plot or anything. I like the concept of the psychic earrings. I could do with a pair of those, both for the dancing and maybe not that I get into many fights, or many fights? I don't get into any fights. What am I talking about? But the combat mode might be useful if you get mugged or something. And then, but the dancing mode, that's handy, right? Just automatically know your dance moves. Because I do always wonder, in things like Bridgerton, how everyone knows those moves anyway. I mean, obviously, they're in the world these historical characters grow up in, they are taught these from a young age, but that is a lot, and everybody just kind of flawlessly doesn't get a step wrong, and I'm always amazed by it. And obviously, as a time traveler, you would not have that training in those moves, so psychic earrings, very handy, and a Chekhov's psychic earrings set up earlier, used later for something else. Let's talk about Rogue, because I really enjoyed Jonathan Groff's portrayal of this character. He felt a little bit like... There was lots of speculation. Let's get this out of the way. Spoilers, obviously. He's not Captain Jack. there was lots of speculation. Is he going to be Captain Jack? Is he going to be a time agent? I joined in that speculation. I thought he might be at least a time agent, if not Captain Jack. He's just a time-travelling bounty hunter. Not a time agent, not Captain Jack. But he does share a lot of things that are very similar to Captain Jack in a way. Obviously, he has the American accent. He has the kind of sweeping look, almost, of and the charisma almost of Captain Jack, but in a very different way. There was even, like, he made some similar jokes. When the sonic screwdriver came up, he made a joke about putting shelves up with it, same as Captain Jack did, which at the point made me think, oh, maybe they are going for a Captain Jack reveal, but no, it didn't come. But I really enjoyed he's sort of Captain Jack, but toned down a lot, because Captain Jack is very over the top in many ways. He's very flirty in an exaggerated way, whereas Rogue was flirty with the Doctor, though most of the flirting was coming from the Doctor, but there was flirting back and forth between them, but in a much more subdued way, and it really worked for him. It really worked. The kind of brooding, it worked. And their back and forth, their flirting, I really liked that. That was really good. You watched my review of Dot and Bubble, you would have seen me complaining slightly, or having it as a slightly negative, the way that the Doctor kind of flirted with Ricky September in a very, what I felt was an objectifying way. He didn't really engage. He was like talking about Ricky September in front of him to Ruby, and the whole conversation felt very objectifying. Here, because it's a two-way thing, because it's a back and forth, it just feels much more natural and much more, well, a lot less creepy than it did last week. It felt like they had a genuine connection, a very fast connection, and I have seen people on Twitter go, wow, that seemed to happen really quick. And yeah, it has. It was quite quick to contain it within the episode, but I didn't mind that. And it's no quicker than his infatuation for Madame Pompadour happened in series 2, for instance, and that one had the added creepiness of the fact that he first met her when she was a child. So yeah, at least Rogue is an adult when he met him. I love the line when they're heading out to his ship and they're comparing ships, and it points at the TARDIS and calls it a shed, and the Doctor's, I like my shed. But the line that I really liked is that when he asked,
Why isn't it cloaked?
It's behind a tree.
for some reason I love that line. That just really tickled me. And the back and forth continued on the ship as well, and I really like that. They've got a great dynamic and a great chemistry, the Doctor and Rogue. And I do hope we see Rogue again, because obviously at the end of the episode he says, find me, and he's gone. But I feel like that he's being set up almost as the new River Song, in the sense that he's some kind of love interest for the Doctor that may pop in and out of the series for little bits here and there, an episode here and there. So it'll be interesting to see if we get to see him again. Probably not this season, maybe in season 2. Talking of being on the ship, let's deal with the floating heads, shall we? The big thing everyone is talking about in that scene is, of course, that Richard E. Grant's head is one of them. Now, I didn't spot that it was Richard E. Grant's head when I watched the episode. I saw the head and I was like, that's not one of the Doctors we know. Who is that? And I could not work it out. It was only when I got to Twitter and I saw people pointing out that it was Richard E. Grant's head that I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. We need to what does that mean? And it can mean so many things, and I'm probably going to do a video about it, so I'll leave that for another day. But I do think it's interesting that the Doctor didn't clock that there was a head there that theoretically he shouldn't recognise. But I don't know. What do you think about the floating head? Which version of Richard E. Grant is it? Is it the Schalke Doctor? Is it the Curse of Fatal Death Doctor that he played? Is it, I don't know, another Doctor? Let me know. Is it an as yet unknown Doctor? I'm going to probably make some kind of theory, explain a video about this at some point this week. But for now, that was just like, oh, that's interesting. I had gone for wondering if they were going to put Peter Cushing's head in there. That would have been fun. But no, we've gone for Richard E. Grant. We will try and explain that somehow in our head canons. I doubt we're ever going to get an official explanation. but we can make our own headcanons for it, certainly. I thought there were some really great lines in this episode. I've said some already, but other ones that I liked was, I liked Ruby. It made me giggle when she said, I know these are posh knobs and everything, but, why do they want to kill them? That was a great line. When they need to draw attention to themselves, and the Doctor suggests that him and Rogue dance to do that, and Rogue asks, I don't see how dancing would cause a scene, and the Doctor replies, you clearly didn't do your research on this era then, because of course, two men dancing in that era would cause quite a stir. And so it does. Oh, one thing I've just remembered, Rogue apparently got his name from D&D. So he's a geeky D&D player, but where if he plays D&D, and there's another reference later on to the aliens cosplaying humans. If he plays D&D, it really seems odd that he doesn't know what cosplay is. They seem quite entwined in some way. Like, even if you play D&D and don't cosplay, you know what cosplaying is, usually. So, that's it. That was a little bit odd. But let's talk about the villains. So we got the idea of cosplaying aliens, which I like. It's an interesting concept. They go to a planet, they've maybe seen Bridgerton or something, and they go, hey, we want to play at this. We want to be these people. And to a degree, that's something that I can understand the motivation for, not the killing side of it, but the wanting to role play other people is a fun concept. I do a lot of amateur dramatics, and I act on stage, and inhabiting a different person and the stories that might revolve around them, whether or not you do that on stage through games, that's an interesting thing to do. So to put that into as the motivation for a bunch of murderous aliens, I like it. They had some good lines too, like we can start wars with the French, the Spanish, anyone who doesn't look British. Thought Indira Varma did a good job as the Duchess, both in human form and then as the more slightly psychotic alien version of the Duchess as well. She did a good job. I thought the suit and the outfits, the costumes of when they were in bird form, some of them looked better than others. I think some of them looked a little bit like Disney characters in a theme park, slightly. Indira's costume was probably the best. I think the one with the twirly things, they looked amusing, certainly, but I do think they look some of them look slightly more on the side of Disney characters in a theme park. But Indira's one was probably the best costume, which makes sense. She was the focus of the leader of the aliens. Some of the plot twists were a little bit maybe predictable. I thought it was obvious that somebody else that we hadn't known before was going to turn out to be an alien. Whether or not that was I thought maybe Rogue would at one point, but quite quickly that was obvious he wasn't going to be, and so I sort of switched around a few people of who it was going to be. Turns out to be the person that Ruby was hanging out with, as well as some other people. There were just more people that were bird aliens, but that felt a little bit predictable. And Ruby, the double bluff of it, trying to make us think that Ruby was had been killed and replaced, and during the wedding scene that wasn't Ruby. I don't know, were we meant to? I think we were meant to believe that Ruby had been killed. Or were we? Because, they're not going to kill a companion off like that, are they? And we know that she survives the next episode. So I guess maybe we weren't meant to be along with that. Maybe we were meant to know that was probably Ruby the whole time and just wonder how she got out of it. Because that twist, if it was meant to be a twist for us, the audience, didn't feel like a twist. It felt like, well, that was obviously going to happen. But now, actually, as I'm thinking about it now, that doesn't make any sense that they would want us to think that we'd think that. I reckon they must have assumed we would assume that it was Rhea Ruby posing as the alien. I thought it was very well played when the Doctor accidentally traps her and then he realises it's her. I will say once again, as I have said before, that I think we got another episode where he cries in this, and here, especially with the Ruby stuff, I think it's now reached the point, because I said this last time, it's not that in any individual episode that I begrudge him crying in that situation, in that episode. It's that because he does it every episode, and it has, I'm pretty sure, been every single episode now, It's becoming kind of like the character trait of him. It's losing its impact somewhat. And I equated this to the 10th Doctor when he says, "Sorry, I'm so sorry." You stop believing it after a while. You stop. He says it so much that the first few times the 10th Doctor does that, you really feel it. But by the end of his era, you're like, yeah, this is just what you say. And yeah, everything on your face looks like you believe it. And yeah, the acting is there, but because you do it so much, it's lessened the impact from it. And I think we're now there with Shooty's crying. Because up until now, even though I've noticed it happening quite a lot, and I've been like, this could start impacting how it affects me as a viewer, I think up until now, it still has affected me in the way they intended to. Here, I think it's reached that point where I'm like, I'm not feeling it as much as I might have done if this hadn't happened for 3 episodes. If he had last cried like 3 episodes ago, and now he was crying, I would probably feel it more. And I didn't. So I think it's reached that point now where he really needs to stop crying every episode. I don't want him to be emotionally suppressed. I love the fact that he will cry, but the fact that it's so much is losing its impact. For me, at least. I don't know. What do you think? Is it losing its impact for you, or do you not mind? Has every time he's cried hit you emotionally the same amount every time? And do you not see that changing? The Rogue and the Doctor kissing, but the Rogue using that moment to sort of sneak the controller away from him so that Rogue can sacrifice himself in Ruby's place by jumping in there and pressing the button. That was also a little bit predictable, but I can forgive that because I think it worked really well. And it without him coming on board the TARDIS as a companion, we needed some way narratively to get rid of him effectively, and I think that was a effective way of doing it and sets him up to come back. He says, "Find me." I think it'll be interesting to see if we do, maybe next season. The Doctor does try and brush off all this very quickly to Ruby afterwards, but she sort of clocks what he's doing, grabs him into a hug. That was a nice moment. Again, the crying here actually worked better than the crying with Ruby. It didn't feel as tired as it had been when Ruby had been in danger, because maybe it's because Ruby's been in danger and he cried because of Ruby being in danger before, but this was about something new and something different. Maybe that had a bit more emotional impact than the one that's been repeated again and again because Ruby's been in danger. So maybe that's it. But then it was a nice hug and nice salute at the end. And yeah, overall a really good episode. And I thought great chemistry between Rogue and the Doctor. Some interesting Bridgerton stuff going on. I liked Ruby in this episode again. The bird people were a great concept. If some of the makeup may have been less, but might have been slightly better, but it didn't detract from the overall episode. Thank you for watching that review. I will be back for another one next week, and then also check out during the week I will try and get a thing about the floating heads out, so check out that when it comes out. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.